Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me? First of all, I must apologize for a little misunderstanding. Previously, the programs used to begin at 4:15. Today, I took it for granted that the Jalsa would begin at 4:15. So that's why I'm late, otherwise I was ready to come. Sorry for keeping you waiting. Now we begin this session with the Tilawat Quran Kareem by Zuna Ahmad. Zuna?
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahu nurus samawati wal ard. Masalu nurehi kamishkatin fiha misbah. Al-misbahu fi zujajah. Az-zujajatu ka'annaha kawkabun durriyun yuqadu min shajaratin mubarakatin zaytunatin la sharqiyatin wala gharbiyatin yakadu zaytuha yuzi'u walalam tamsashu nar. Nurun ala nur yahdillahu linurehi man yasha. Wa yadribullahul amsala linnas wallahu bikulli shay'in alim. Fi buyutin azinallahu an turfa wa yuzkara fiha ismuhu yusabbihu lahu fiha bil ghuduwwi wal asal. Rijalun la tulhihim tijaratum wala bay'un an zikrillahi wa iqamis salati wa ليجزيهم الله أحسن ما عملوا ويزيدهم من فضله والله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب.
Jazakumullah. Translation by Aisha Sharif. Aisha Sharif, please. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, may peace be with you. I seek refuge with Allah from Satan the accursed. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful. Chapter 24, The Light, verses 36 through 39. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. His light is as if there were a lustrous niche wherein is a lamp. The lamp is inside a glass globe. The globe is, as it were, a glittering star. The lamp is lit from the oil of a blessed tree, an olive, neither of the east nor of the west, whose oil well nigh would shine forth even though fire touched it not. Light upon light. Allah guides to his light whomsoever he pleases. And Allah sets forth parables for men. And Allah knows all things full well. This light illumines houses with regard to which Allah has ordained that they be exalted, and that his name be remembered in them. Therein do glorify him in the mornings and the evenings men whom neither merchandise nor traffic diverts from the remembrance of Allah and the observance of prayer and the giving of the zakat. They fear a day in which hearts and eyes will be in a state of agitation and anguish. So Allah will give them the best reward of their deeds and give them increase out of his bounty. And Allah does provide for whomsoever he pleases without measure.
Nasirat will now present a chorus. Nasirat, please. The chorus is going to be presented by Milwaukee Nasirat.
पर्दे जो ते हटाए मुरसली हैं वो तैयबो मी है उसकी सना यही है हक से जो हुक्म आए उसने वो कार दिखाए जो राज के बताए निमुलता यही है उस नूर पर फिदा हूँ उसका ही मैं हुआ हूँ वो है मैं चीज क्या हूँ बस फैसला यही है दिल में यही है हर दम तेरा सही पचूमू कुरान की गिर्द घूमू खाबा मेरा यही है वो पेशवा हमारा जिससे है नूर सारा नाम उसका है मोहम्मद दिलबर मेरा यही है दिलबर मेरा यही है
Well done, Hazrat from Milwaukee.
Now the
Beautiful.
translation. That blessed and great leader from whom proceeds all the light. His name is Muhammad, and he alone is my friend, my dearest, well-beloved. All the prophets are faultless and holy, each better than the other. But coming from the Lord God, the highest and the best among them all, without doubt, is Muhammad himself. He is better far than all have gone before, in excellence like the moon. Every discerning eye to him is turned, since he alone has the light and the splendor of the full moon. He rolled aside the veils had come to hang between, and he pointed out the inner way. He brings you into communion with the Lord God. He is the only one that best can help you in achievement of the supreme aim and purpose of human life. Muhammad today is crowned king in the realms of religion, the chiefest, the jewel among all the prophets, the healthiest influence, the purest, the most commonly, the most trustworthy, the most dependable. All this superlative praise befits him alone. Whatever the commandments came from the Lord, he honored them all. In the terms of his own life, he demonstrated fully that they were eminently the most clear and the most practicable, far from being were dreamy optices. He gave the most lucid explanations of the subtlest points, and these are the things indeed which constitute the best and the highest of all blessings. Indeed, I am sold entirely on this light, wholly and completely am I devoted to it. In my mind there are no reservations. He alone is the one that counts, while I, in myself, amount absolutely to nothing. This alone is the basic truth. This alone is the final verdict. The only urge that moves me, the only desire that dominates my heart, that dominates my being, is every moment of my life I stand reverently kissing that sacred book. In a transport of joy and devotion, I dance around it, since it is in truth my Kaaba, the most vital pivot of all my hopes, of all my aspirations.
Jazakumullah. Now a poem will be presented by Aziza Rana, which will be later translated by Fatima Hanif. Aziza Rana, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome.
Selected verses from the Rasamin, a collection of Urdu poems of the Prophet Messiah alayhi salam. Hamdo sana usi ko, hamdo sana usi ko, jo zat javedan उल्टी है सब कहानी, सब गैर हैं वही है एक दिल का यार जानी, सब गैर हैं वही है एक दिल का यार जानी, दिल में मेरे यही है सुबहाना मैं यरानी, है पाक पाक कुदरत, अज़मत है उसकी अज़मत, लर्ज़ा है अहले कुर्बत, करोबियों पे है बस, है आम उसकी रहमत, क्यों कर हो शुक्र नेमत, हम सब हैं उसकी सन्नत, उससे करो मोहब्बत, गैरों से करना उल्फत, कब चाहे उसकी गैरत, गैरों से करना उल्फत, कब चाहे उसकी गैरत, ये रोज कल मुबारक सुबहाना मैं यरानी, जो कुछ हमें है राहत, सब उसकी जूद मन्नत, उसे है दिल को बैत, दिल में है उसकी अज़मत, बेहतर है उसकी ताक़त, ताक़त में है सआदत, ये रोज़ कल मुबारक सुबहाना मैं यरानी, सब गैर हैं वही है एक दिल का यार जानी, दिल में मेरे यही है सुबहाना मैं यरानी।
Jazakumullah. Now recitation by Fatima Hanif, please. Assalamu alaikum. Fatima Hanif, I thought you would sing the Urdu song and she would translate. It's the other way around.
Yes.
Did you prefer this way?
I like it both ways.
Okay.
I'm going to sing the translation. That's all.
Okay, you're going to sing the translation. But also would you sing a few of the Urdu song, Urdu verses, which you remember?
Okay. Yes.
Just a few. Just to give them a taste of how you sing, mashallah. Right?
Yes, yes. Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome.
Hamdo sanauzi ko Jalsa Javedani, Ham संसार नहीं है उसका कोई न कोई सानी बाकी वही हमेशा गैर उसके सब है फानी गैरों से दिल लगाना छूटती है सब कहानी
Beautiful.
The translation, where am I? I lost my translation. Oh, here it is. I'm sorry. All praise for him alone, whose being is eternal, none his equal, and no one like unto him. He alone subsists forever. Apart from him, everything is mortal. Attachment to anything else is all a vain and futile affair. All here are strangers, all are aliens. He alone is the friend of my heart's choice. This is the entire content of my heart, and holy indeed is he who sees me, who watches over me, graciously mindful of all my needs. He is holy, and holy indeed his powers. His grandeur alone is real grandeur. Those who stand near unto him, they tremble with awe. The angels are overwhelmed. His mercy and grace, his bounty are universal. 'Tis impossible for man to render him adequate thanks. We are all the product of his creative genius, and him alone we should love. That man should love, should worship anything else, offends his sense of honor. God grant this day for us be a day of blessings, and holy indeed is he who sees me. In his grace and compassion, who watches over me, graciously mindful of all my needs. Whatsoever peace and comfort we experience is all due to his munificence. My heart I have sold to him. Obedience to him is best for man. In this obedience lies our good, our welfare. God grant this day for us be a day of blessings, and holy indeed is he who sees me. In his grace and compassion, who watches over me, graciously mindful of all my needs.
Jazakumullah. Fatma, come here. You, 1 minute. You promised me you would send me so many of these poems sung in Urdu and translated into English.
I will do
And you forgot that.
No, I didn't.
You know one thing, you need no music because you sing according to the throbbing of your heart. Your music, your words throb with your heart, and us throb with your words. Thank you. Now there is a presentation of some sort of, what's this, prize distribution? Huh? Where is Sadr Lajna Ma'illah who, have you some prize distribution function? What? Right, that's good. Thank you. No, where is that little girl from Canada who used to... No, they shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have committed that mistake. No. Where is the girl from Canada who specializes in extolling God? Yeah? Mirza Tahir's daughter. Where is she? Hasn't she come? Mirza Tahir's daughter from Canada, she used to do it. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Alhamdulillah that today I'm attending this Lajna, not Lajna, but ladies session of the annual conference of Jamaat Ahmadiyya United States. Yesterday, during my Friday sermon, I took up the subject of tarbiyat, which is the upbringing of the new generations. And from my points, I kept 2 or 3 points for this particular occasion of addressing the Lajna or the ladies this afternoon. Because those points were more appropriately discussed here than in men's session, because there are a lot of responsibilities towards the younger generation which can be specifically discharged by the mothers rather than the fathers. Here I have in view the growing girls who enter from their childhood into maturity, and that is the difficult time. It is the beginning of the dawn into a day, which, if not properly attended to, would turn into a dusk entering the night. So this is the point which I wanted to enlarge upon in this ladies' session, because a change, of course, there is. It's up to the mothers to make it a dawn rather than a dusk. If you permit them to go out in the world of darkness, it would be extremely dangerous and harmful for them to change from a sort of light into a pitch darkness, which results in following an atmosphere which is agnostic to God. Agnostic in some ways, but in many other ways is hostile to God. And agnosticism and hostility to God, they both have common borders. In America, unfortunately, I have noticed this, that it is ultimate atheism which results in the moral destruction and degradation of the younger generations, which grow with this to begin with agnosticism, and then ultimately are led on to positive atheism. Agnosticism can be described or defined before you with reference to everyone who grows with some ideas which have been pumped into him right from his or her childhood. Such children as are born in godly families, right from their childhood, they are told of the existence of a God. And without questioning that claim, they begin to believe in that. But then there comes this difficult period of growing into a new phase of their independent existence. Always, it so happens that a person who enters this phase, sooner or later, begins to question his beliefs which he or she had inherited. And it is that period which gives birth to agnosticism. Children, when they grow up, they begin to ask questions like, who created God? Was he from ever? How could a thing be from ever? And who created the universe? If God did, then who created God? And so on and so forth. These are the questions which ultimately tire them out. If they do not have access to some knowledgeable person who could lead them on to the right conclusions, many a time they're lost in the wilderness of agnosticism. Agnosticism is lack of knowledge, where they do not know whether God exists or does not. So their journey into the outer world begins with this agnosticism. But the outer world most often is positively anti-God and atheistic in its attitude. The educational system in most of the modern countries, in the name of secularism, leads people away from God. And some positively claim that there is no God, it is just a myth, just an illusion of the people who believe in him. So this atheism ultimately results in utter demoralization and ultimately destruction of all the moral fiber that you had woven into your children, then you can't have any hold upon them. You may cry if you please. You may go on calling them back, but they would not listen to you because they believe that you are a thing of the past. You believe in unrealities. You believe in myths which have no existence. So why should they answer you when you call them? So they reject you as their guiding angels. And there the break becomes complete and final and destructive. This is the meaning of what I said. Here they enter a dusk, and the dusk leads to a night, for which there is no break of the next morning. The break of the morrow after the night is when they die here and open their eyes into the next world. So it is a very serious question which I am taking up. It is the mothers who must enlighten them as to the realities of God. And right from their childhood, they must be told the love of God should be suckled into them like a mother suckles her child. And it should become a part of their system. So when they reach this age of uncertainties, before that age, the mothers should enlighten themselves to all the answers of these questions. Otherwise, this love of God which you bestowed upon them would go waste, because when they reach this puberty, the age of puberty, and begin to question things which they thought they were born with, they no longer believe in them unless properly guided. So it is here where I want Lajna Ma'illah, or the Ahmadi ladies, to be prepared before this time comes. These questions can be many-sided. An example I have given to you, and that example is that of doubt as to the existence of God on the basis of their human experiences. It is not an ordinary basis. When children are taught by their mothers that I gave birth to you, they say, who gave birth to you? And they say, my mother gave birth to me. And say, who then? And so on and so forth. So this is the first mistake which is committed here. They believe that everything which is born has to be born herself. Like that. Like a finished unit. And then when you go on telling them, God created you because there has to be some creator. At that moment, the seed of doubt is born. And they believe in a philosophy where everything which is created has to be created itself. Now, this is a very important system of attitude of education which I am dealing with. Right from the beginning, you should tell them that we are not eternal. One thing is certain, and only this thing is certain, that we are not eternal. We came into being, we don't know how, not fully at least, but we know that before our beginning there was nothing. There was just death and stark death which prevailed and nothing else did. There had to be some conscience, some consciousness preceding that hour of death which gave birth to us. Because death cannot give birth to life by itself. Unconsciousness cannot give birth to consciousness. So it is that which has to be told them right from the beginning. It will create no problems for them later on. Because this is a simple logic. Death cannot give birth to life. It is something which every child understands and can understand. Unconsciousness cannot give birth to consciousness. That's the second step. And the third is that we know that we are not eternal, so consciousness has to be eternal. And it is that consciousness which gives birth to everything. Now, if you teach the preliminary lessons in belief in God in a systematic manner, which is true, the alternate cannot be proved. All the great atheistic philosophers have attempted their best to prove this system of logic to be wrong, and they strike their head against stone walls and cannot go across. Now, I'm telling you this because I have read all about the atheistic philosophy, where they begin to object against the existence of God through ordinary logic, ordinary human logic. Those who are wiser among them, they ultimately reach this point beyond which they cannot travel. They know for themselves, certainly, that life is not eternal. And if life is not eternal, life must have been born by some eternal life. Now, I do not want to develop this argument further because it would occupy the entire speech which I am going to deliver to you this afternoon. But you should remember this point very clearly and in future use it upon your children as I have just explained. But later on, they would still require help. And that help will be of different nature. When you throw them out in the environment, they would be going out to new trials of their love and hatred. They would be thrown out into a world where they will be attracted by pleasures of which they would have just gained some knowledge. Children can live with their parents eternally if they remain children eternally. But when they grow up, something within them begins to grow and blossom into a new set of pleasures. This is what we call adulthood. With adulthood, they are attracted towards new things in life which they could not find in their parents. So that is the moment when they begin outward looking. They have somehow to appease the urge for something more, something which their mothers could not give them, something which their fathers could not give them, their brothers could not give them, but they need it. There, a different type of companionship would be required by them from you. There, first of all, the warning signals which should be given to them are your responsibility. I cannot explain in detail because at times it may become embarrassing for me to discuss these things in a Lajna session like this session is, but I can draw up hints, of course. The society around is, first of all, immoral because it is atheist, where you are not answerable for your deeds and your attitudes. And of that I have already spoken. You must be prepared for that challenge ultimately to their belief in God. For that not only your verbal instruction is required, but also special books should be chosen by you which deal with this subject. Because I know many among you cannot handle the question of belief in God properly, and if they handle it themselves and improperly do so, then they themselves would be responsible for sowing the seed of non-belief in their children. So turn to such literature which is available in Jamaat Ahmadiyya, which is first of all to be read by the mothers. They should thoroughly familiarize themselves with that literature. And then they should be ready for any questions from their children, and so that they can somewhat answer the questions, and later on, when they can begin to read well and understand what they read, you can give them the books and tell them to read them through and come back to you with more questions. So in this way, an educational exercise begins at home. And in this way, they're not suppressed. They're not just told dogmatically, there is a God, believe it or not. You train them like explorers. They explore the possibilities. You lead them on to that exploration with the help of the knowledgeable people who have done this before you. And in this way, you can inquire from them. What about this objection? And what about that? And they should answer back with the help of the literature they have read. No, mother, you're wrong. I have read that this is exactly the state of affairs, not what you think is. So when the children become the teachers, that is the most certain way of teaching them. I have seen it in my life in practice everywhere in Pakistan during my tours of Pakistan, which I traveled far and wide in different capacities. I always discovered that when children begin to teach their parents, then they become really fit for the future. And nothing can dissuade them from the path they pursue them. So this is a suggestion to you. Most of you, the mothers here, and the would-be mothers as well, do not know how to answer many questions which agitate the children's mind, not now at least, but they should enlighten themselves, and then gradually shift the position of a teacher to that of a learner. Give the appropriate books to your children and expect them to teach you and satisfy your query and answer to your questions. In this way, I hope, and this is my experience, that this hope is founded on truth. I hope that inshallah from then on, they will be the guardians of the belief in God and the unity in God. They will associate themselves with that belief in the unity in a manner that the urge to defend that unity would grow from within them. Wherever they walk out in the streets or in the schools, in classrooms, in colleges, laboratories, wherever they go, they would go with this guardianship attitude. They would guard the unity within them and defend it against the enemies of unity. But the second thing which I suggested is other challenges which will drag them away from a pious life at home when piety did not mean that much to them. Because when there was an age where piety was sort of imposed upon them by nature. A child has to be pious. There is no way out. So when he grows into a position where he could be pious or could not be pious, when there are two options available to him, that is the time when he looks back at his home as something which could not give him all that life is built for. And it is there that the challenges begin. So first of all, in that particular requirement of the child, you should make yourself fully aware of what is happening in the society around. You cannot deny them pleasure, but you can warn them against precipitate actions in acquiring pleasure. And it is there that you should be fully aware of what is happening in the society around. In the society in America, there is so much literature in this area of human urge for satisfying his sensual urges and what it results in. And you'll be amazed to read in that literature that those who pursue their urge to satisfy themselves as far as the sensual urges are concerned, they're always led on to a sort of wilderness where they want to demand, they go on demanding more and more and more, and all that they demand cannot be obtained unless they turn beastly in their attitudes, unless they become extremely selfish, unless they do not care what happens to the other partner. Loyalties are destroyed. Faith is destroyed. And the player itself becomes the punishment of the one who obtains that player. Because there are limitations to everything. You chase the player until you cannot go beyond. It is there that the drugs take over. It is there where alcohol takes over and other ugly habits which have to be adopted to somehow appease your rising dissatisfaction with the life and its challenges. So the entire society becomes irritant in a sense that you must continue to appease that irritation by committing more crimes. Now, it is apparently a contradiction itself, but it is not. In real life, this is exactly what happens. The youth which goes out into life begins to chase pleasure with such hopes and deep conviction that what is rising in me as an urge, like a thirst, will be satiated if I do this. Of course it will be satiated to begin with. But what next? It goes, the thirst goes on rising until it reaches a crescendo where it cannot be satiated anymore. Then the change of partners, the pursuit of pleasure everywhere takes the person into various areas, as I call a wilderness, where his pursuit is only imaginary and illusionary. And if you look at these people, the way they end up their lives, they are absolute failures. They are ultimately rejected by life. And they end up in madhouses or in such hospitals as try to treat the untreatable. Look at their ends, and through their ends you can show the beginning to your children that this is what they are aiming at. Why don't you understand? They get the pleasure only for a while. It excites and excites to more pleasure and so on, and they ultimately end up in utter frustration. You meet such people after a few years, and then you will notice something having disappeared from their faces. That quietness, that nobility, that dignity is all gone. These are children of chastity. If chastity is gone, then quietness is gone, then dignity is gone, that inner nobility in a person is also destroyed. So they feel dissatisfied all the time that they are satisfying themselves. This is the point which has to be clearly explained to your daughters so that they begin to understand this. And then you have to tell them that everything you touch abroad, outside, without really knowing the ultimate purpose of the person in whom you are interested, you are in for a big shock in your life, because the person you think is giving you pleasure will ultimately snatch away the pleasure and leave behind a sense of frustration and no more. Sometimes that person may leave behind a child to care for, with no means to do that, with every new possible partner, avoiding marrying such girls, knowing that she bears a child from somebody else, and knowing that she could not be trusted because she lost her trust with her parents, with her faith, with her religion. How could they be trusted by their would-be possible husbands? So that is how the dissatisfaction increases. You see in such advanced societies so many broken homes and homes which were never made in the first place. They were shattered right from the beginning when they built hopes of building their future by gaining friendship of a person who was irresponsible. And most of these persons have to be irresponsible because they just chase pleasure, no more. So what is gained is at the cost of your ultimate satisfaction, which is referred to in Islam as salam, which means peace. So you gain excitement at the cost of peace. While the excitement does not last, the peace does. It is a complete misunderstanding on the part of the young people of such a society that when they behave and control themselves, they are bargaining for a continuous dissatisfaction. That's not so. They are bargaining for such pleasures which will live with them forever. They will become a part of their life because they will gain trust. They will be trusted and they will require a trustworthy partner. And with mutual trust, the beginning of a heaven on earth begins. But these are all areas which I do not want to enlarge in further detail. You can tell them of the diseases born out of irresponsible sex. You can tell them of herpes, which is sex-related, which would never leave a person once it gets hold of it. Be it a boy or a girl, the herpes goes on circulating in the society, endlessly so. And the person seems to be cured only for a while by the modern treatment, but if the person asks the doctor who treats him or her, he would be told that this treatment is only temporary. You are dealing with a giant of a disease which knows no defeat, no frustration. So then comes the AIDS, or HIV positive or whatever you call it. That goes on punishing the person who thought he could run away with the pleasure against the creation of God, against nature. So all we are provided with, which are means of obtaining pleasure, we are provided with a purpose, for a function to perform by these organs which become a source of pleasure for us. If the function is lost, then that becomes the beginning of the end, because it is there that the nature begins to punish you. And when nature decides to punish, man cannot defend himself. It's impossible. So you can tell your children what they're bargaining for. They're stepping out into society where there are dangers all around them. Every step has to be taken with caution. If you fill them with that special awareness of the dangers surrounding them, then you're much more likely to win the battle against their future missteps in life. But that is not all. You must give them something positive to do. Unless you give them something positive to do, they will just not sit idle and keep them away from something they could have achieved no person, no man can ever live in emptiness. Remember this. So if you create emptiness in their hearts because you drive the urge for pleasure out because of fear, they still will not live in that emptiness forever. Times may come, they will say, let whatever happens, happen. We don't care. But we must do something in our life. We must satisfy ourselves. Now before that time comes, give them the pleasure of satisfaction in other areas of human occupation. If your children are provided with something which they are convinced is good for them, that moment there begins a pursuit of pleasure in them which is never harmful in any manner of speaking. I call it creative pleasure, not destructive pleasure. And that can be experimented with so many things. If you, for instance, look at the lives of some great scientists, you'll be amazed to see that pleasures lost their meaning, but the same pleasures which were all meaningful to others in the society, they lost their meanings to some great scientists who fell in love with their work. And the sense of achievement was their merit. The sense of achievement was their reward. So this is the second part of your tarbiyat, or bringing up of your children, to which I want to draw your attention. In London, I have noticed this, that more and more Ahmadi youth are now involved in creative work in Jamaat Ahmadiyya. The girls who are involved, they run into thousands now. Previously, it was so difficult for their parents to keep them away from the society around, and they could not accompany them anyway to schools and colleges. If they disappeared from home, nobody could stop them, because the social system would give them full support for that. So ever since my arrival in London, I continue to work on this basic philosophy of life, that you give occupation to somebody, an occupation which is rewarding because of its goodness. That reward would protect them from the other attractions of life so strongly that they will lose interest in those attractions. And when they lose interest in those attractions, the society loses interest in them. It treats them with respect, all right, but they know they are not for them. And they know that the society is not for them. This is what I have shown to many, many scholars from different universities who wanted to explore the Ahmadiyya way of life, and came to me and wanted me to give them an opportunity to discuss matters with Ahmadi girls, women, etc., of all ages in fact, who are so satisfied with the Jamaat work that they do not care as to what society thinks of them, of their old style habits of life. So they thought that there is some sort of religious coercion which is carried out. I told them, you are free to meet anybody. Go to any Ahmadi home and we can provide you with addresses, and talk to the Ahmadi girls and women who are involved in works like MTA, like various research groups, etc., and see for yourself what they answer. Hear for yourself, I should say, what they answer. And they always return amazed. They said, we did not discover any dissatisfaction with life in the slightest with them. On the contrary, we saw them fully satiated, fully satisfied. And their work was their reward. The goodness which was the cause, that had become the cause of their life, it became the end of their life as well. The result was that in the beginning there was goodness, in the middle it was goodness, in the end it was goodness, and they did not live frustrated moments. They did not live with the realization they were missing something in the society which offers them pleasures, and they do not accept it. They did not accept it because they did not want to. They thought it was just an ordinary, small thing. But the nobility they were pursuing were much greater. Now, of course, their lives are not like Newton's or any other great scientist or scholar, but they are on the path of those great people, for whom the pride of performance is the reward itself. That is why many a philosopher is known to be so disheveled and so careless of his dress and his habits that to the outer society circles who observe them from their own spheres of life, such people are half mad. They don't care how they should be dressed. They don't know when to eat. They are not interested in women. Women are not interested in them. And this is how they are living a sort of empty life. But go to them and look at them from within them by projecting yourself into them. And then you realize what life means. They are not offering any sacrifice. But to abandon the cause which they pursue, that would be sacrifice for them. So every moment they spend in life is in pursuit of something good. That is one way of helping your daughters when they grow to adulthood and begin to mix with the society around them. Give them a noble purpose to live by. Give them something which would occupy their vision of life. Now, when I was a bit hesitant as to which word should I use, I thought it was vision, which was somehow missing me. The vision of life is highly important. This vision has to be created by you, or whatever I have told you will not mean anything. Everybody has a vision. And when he closes upon that vision, the player means that closing upon. If you have a vision in life and you pursue it and close upon that vision, this is your pleasure. Whether other people may see it as such or not. But this is the basic philosophy of life. You must have a vision to pursue. So give them a vision to live for and live by. And that has to be a noble cause by pursuing which they serve the mankind, they serve knowledge, they serve the higher purpose of pleasing God. So these are different visions which you can bestow upon your children when they grow older, and let the visions take over from you and enwrap them. So now I turn to the realities from these generalizations. As I suggested earlier, in England we have successfully pursued this formula, which was again tried in Germany with the same success. You'll be amazed at seeing the small girls and boys which are given a vision right from that age, grow into adulthood, and they do not deviate from that vision which they had made their own. Thousands of Ahmadi girls in Germany and in England, and thousand upon thousand of Ahmadi boys in Germany and England are deeply satisfied with their life because it has a vision, it has a purpose, which the other society could not give them. So from their schools or from their colleges, they return briefly to their homes, not to go to disco clubs or to other, what I should say, the filthy mafia-like organizations, but they hasten out of their homes to go to some Ahmadi center of producing, for instance, MTA, or producing some literary work which I have entrusted them with, or making researches into this or that. There's so much which I have given them to work on. And it has become so important for them that if you look at those girls and boys, you'll be amazed at what sort of people they are. They're aliens visiting Germany, perhaps. And they are such aliens which influence the entire society around them. Many a German political leader has paid me this compliment. When we met, he said, "What have you done to your boys and girls? They do not have to be roped in. Something within them keeps them roped in for the Jamaat for which they are working." So I tell them briefly what my philosophy of life is, which is the philosophy of the Quran. Of course, I have no other philosophy in my life than the Quran presents. So this is what the Quran presents in relation to the prophets of Allah. Right from their childhood, they're possessed not by the worldly pursuits, but possessed by a vision of life which leads them to God. And they do not care what the society thinks of them until the society begins to think of them in a different way altogether. And when the society changes its attitude towards them, most often by that time they are gone back to their Lord. Then the society goes on building their images beyond realities. While their images, the greatness of their images was related to realities. They had gone away from the myths of idolatrous societies into the realities of nature created by God. That is what made the prophets. But when they die, after a struggle of a generation or two, people begin to follow them with a different attitude altogether. They think that those who had struggled all their lives for truth and reality were themselves unreal and imaginary and mythical. So the idolatry begins once again. But that is, I think, a bit too far a deviation from the purpose the subject which I am discussing. I turn back to the creation of visions. Here in America, I already begin to see some children in different groups and in different participations in Jamaat work, where they seem to be already charged with this vision. So there is not much more for you to do. In the first place, try somehow to have MTA installed in your houses, because that which you lack will be provided by MTA. This I have noticed during my mulaqat programs, and I am amazed when some parents present their small child who can hardly speak, sing a song sung on MTA. And he seems to be possessed by that song. And all the different programs which are presented by MTA, whenever reproduced here in America, for instance, yesterday or the day before it was, when in children's class, a group of Ahmadi girls sang a song which was sung by a London group of Ahmadi girls who are trained by MTA in my Urdu class. They sang them so well and they were so happy that as if they had obtained everything they lived for. And I could see on their faces a determination to pursue the same pleasure of imitating good things in life. For them, the world around began to recede. A new world began to arise from the death of the world around. This is the meaning of occupation of visions or creation of visions. There's so much work to be done. Islam requires many areas of researches. In all areas of secular knowledge, the inferences are wrongly drawn, and the students are led away from God intentionally by the so-called neutral secularists. But they are not neutral. So if you put Ahmadi boys and girls on the right path to draw the right conclusions from the study of the same subjects, that would be the beginning of the creation of a new vision for life for them. Whenever I have given a specific task to any Ahmadi scholar in the world of correlating his knowledge with the knowledge of the Quran and the knowledge of truth as we know from the Quran, I always found such people extremely excited about it, and once they begin their journey into this new sort of research, they become happier and happier until a time comes when they tell me that enough of the world and the worldly pursuits, now we have learned the taste of the pleasure of pursuing truth as Islam presents it. Accept us as a waqf zindagi. We want to abandon the rest of our educational career or scientific career for the sake of Jamaat Ahmadiyya, press it into the service of God, and that would be our happiness. Now this miracle happens only because their vision is right. So Lajna, I think, should go into this subject in detail. They should find out how many girls are studying which subject. There are scientists among you who are being prepared for the future. There are doctors, there are physicists, there are chemists, there are biochemists, there are this and that, computerists. To all of them, specific tasks can be given which would create the new vision which I'm talking about. And then you can throw them out into the world, they would take care of themselves. You don't have to be with them all the time. So these are small things, I know, but the small things which make big beginnings, which make the future of your children, and not at the cost of any pleasure. What they swap is excitement with peace. And it is peace which man pursues, which man wants to pursue. It is the peace from which man began his journey. And pardon me when I use these words, man. By man I mean all the ladies who are here. Because this is a customary expression which, when used in the holy books, does not mean to indicate a man with the sense of masculinity about it. I have proved it before during my question and answer sessions that the Quran goes on referring to mankind or humankind as men, but clarifies the issue at many other places by indicating that by men we mean both men and women. As far as the existence of a soul is concerned, it is neither masculine nor feminine. So it had to be referred to with some preposition. And the Quran uses the so-called male preposition not to indicate that the soul has a male sex or the soul has a female sex. In Germany, for instance, in answer to one question, I reminded the questioner that when you read the Quran, you'll be surprised to see that human soul is always referred to by the Quran as a female. Why are you not happy about it? Every man's soul in the Quran is referred to as a female. So the Quran is not at all prejudiced either in the favor of one or the other, because it is the soul which matters, and the soul is referred to as a female thing. Anyway, this is incidental to my address. What I want to point out to you is that every human who lives must live for the purpose of attaining peace. If he does not try to attain peace, all his life would be wasted into pursuing restlessness. That thing which you call pleasure has another name, and that is restlessness, uncertainty. That thing which you think as death has another name, which is peace in religious terms. So when you learn to live, when you learn to live with peace here on earth, then death does not offer you any death at all. The death offers you the peace in which you are being evolved into the next world. And that is why the Holy Quran reminds us that when the believers who have been doing good deeds here on earth, they open their eyes in the next world, all that would be said to them would be peace, peace, and peace. So the peace they have gained here would become the peace of the paradise to which they will be led. And that can be tasted here. When you pursue the vision, the sort of visions I am referring to, then you begin to gain that peace and taste of it, which would be so beautifully satisfying that you will no longer be stirred. You will find yourself at calm. You will gain a sort of tranquility, which would be the object of your life. So give this object of your life to your children. Bestow it upon them. Let them work for tranquility rather than excitement. Tranquility is the ultimate answer for the creation of humankind. And I hope with that I'll have some more time left to refer to a few more things, because I understand the time is up to 6 o'clock, is it? Is it not? What time do I have? Lajna Mawla, tell me. How much time am I left with? And the mulaqat begins at 6 o'clock? Huh? The mulaqat begins at 6 o'clock. So I should wind up within the next few minutes, right? Come here. Let me congratulate you on the quality of recitation of the Holy Quran by your daughter. It's beautiful, but only she needs to be corrected here or there in the right way of elongating the voice or shortening it. That I'll do. Huh? But thank you for that beautiful recitation. Allah bless you. Okay. What I said to you was in fact introductory to what I was to say to you in this. Because I had prepared from my knowledge of the history of Muslim, not only Muslim, but great women which had performed great things for humanity. And it was this to which I wanted to refer ultimately by preparing for this. As I told you, women are not something to look down upon. They have created great things and they have attained great things in life. And the Holy Quran pays homage to women in that respect. And great godly women have led mankind to goodness, and that is why the Holy Prophet ﷺ reminds men, and women of course as well, that your paradise lies under the feet of your mothers. What are mothers? These are the mothers which I am addressing. The paradise lies under the feet of such mothers that I am describing to you. And if you tell your children what sort of women they were, whose name was eternalized by the Quran, and whose names were eternalized by the history of religion when you pursue it at the beginning of prophethood. There are always great women involved in that creation of the prophethood. Not creation, of course, but in helping the tasks of prophethood, without which that prophethood would be a sort of incomplete prophethood. Women have done great things in life, so much so that the Holy Quran refers to two women as the model for all men in Islam. Now, talk of those people who reject Islam because they say it does not grant proper station to women in Islam. What greater status or station in Islam can you imagine than, as mentioned in the verse which I am going to recite before you, which says that there are two women who have become models for all men, for all times to come. And those two women are one Asya and one Maryam. So imagine how the Quran sets two models of virtue before the believers who follow Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in the form of two great ladies. So if you tell your daughters that this also is a model for you to pursue, why do you waste your life here on earth? Why don't you try to rise to the greatness of Maryam, or at least to the greatness of Asya, a woman of the house of Pharaoh? That is what Asya was. So I recite these verses and then I'll explain a few more things before the time ends, and I'll say farewell to you till maybe next or next year's. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وضرب الله مثلا للذين آمنوا امرأة فرعون إذ قالت رب ابن لي عندك بيتا في الجنة ونجني من فرعون وعمله وَنَجَّنِي مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. Remember the woman of the house of Pharaoh who, addressing God, begged him for a few things, and I'm going to count those one after the other. رَبِّ ابْنِ لِي عِنْدَكَ بَيْتًا فِي الْجَنَّةِ. O my Lord, this house of mine is not my house. I can't do anything of good which I want to. So although I live in this house of mud and mortar, but, O my Lord, this is not my house. So I have abandoned this house for your sake. Build me a house in the Jannah, in the hereafter. That is the one thing which she begged from Allah. And secondly, what she said, وَنَجِّنِي مِنْ فِرْعَوْنَ وَعَمَلِهِ. I am married to Pharaoh, and I can't run away from him. But save me from him. وَعَمَلِهِ. And his bad deeds. So that despite his greatness here on earth, he cannot influence me and my good character. وَنَجِّنِي مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. And save me from a people who are wrongdoers. Now remember here that the prayer was not heard in the sense which people normally understand it. Najani did not mean that the Pharaoh should be destroyed in my lifetime and I run away from Pharaoh and his people so that they have no influence over me. This is not what happened. She lived all of her remaining life in the same house with the same Pharaoh, who was a great tyrant, one of the greatest tyrants who ever lived. But Najani means save me from the influence of these bad people. That is why she said, wa amalehi. Save me from the influence of a powerful monarch who was one of the greatest tyrants. Yet make him, frustrate him from influencing me with the bad habits which he possesses. This is what she did. And this is what was heard by Allah, and this is what was achieved. So you are living in a society which in this negative sense is less powerful than Pharaoh was for the Asya who lived in his house. She was married to a monarch whose greatness led him to believe that he was God, who could decide for the life or death of people around him, who could think of great tortures, most terrible tortures for people who disobeyed him. Yet Asya lived with him in the same house, but her goodness was never influenced by that man. So why can't you save your daughters from the surrounding evil which sort of fills the air, pollutes the air? But you have to tell them. Let them read these verses and tell them at a time when they make their own objects in life. Let them make at least that object of becoming an Asya for this age which they are sharing with us. So sometimes when you impress upon your young such great stories which are real in life, which are real stories, we call them stories, but they are realities. You can tell them with such passion, with such personal conviction, that becomes their moment of decision making. They hear you, and within their heart something clicks, and they say, that is it for us. We will follow that great woman. No society would be permitted to overwhelm us in its evil. We will pursue the course of submission to God. That is how people can imitate Asya, and here you should not leave your boys out of this, because the Holy Quran does not speak only of ladies following this model, but all men and women in Islam must follow this model. Tell your boys as well, look here, there was a woman so helpless, so powerless, living in the house of a great tyrant, who was determined that he would fail to influence her. And she was impregnable. And that was done because of her prayer. She prayed to God along with her will to do so. So herein rises the importance of prayer as well. You must tell your daughters and your sons that whatever resolution you make in life, it can only be realized if you pray to God to help you achieve that object. Now I have to stop here, but there is the great mention of Hazrat Maryam, who is also mentioned as a model for the future of mankind. But of that maybe I speak during my address to Lajna in Canada within a few days. So if you can listen to, watch that video preparation, I think it will be displayed throughout MTA. Then inshallah, we'll divide this speech into two parts. like I divided the same into two parts last time I visited here. There I began with Canada and almost finished here. Whatever was left, I continued with it in my address in Jalsa Salana, UK, and whatever was left of that, I continued during my Jalsa of Germany. So let us make a beginning here. And the end, which I hope will be a good ending, we'll make elsewhere, either in Canada or maybe during our Jalsa, Salana or annual conference at UK. Now here, the private secretary is reminding me that you are late here, but do not be late for the next program, please. So with that, I bring this session to a close. These discussions are very important and very interesting. And they are interesting because I know they rise from my heart. And they throb with the throbbing of my heart. And whenever things rise from my heart, I know they sink into the hearts. So throughout this exercise is not just a formal admonition where I deliver sermons. This is no sermon. This is the music of my life, which I want to become the music of your life. Allah bless you, and let's join in silent prayer. Amen.